Hello and welcome back to my channel. Here is the look we're going to be doing today. I had someone comment that they wanted to see a winged out eyeshadow look using just eyeshadow versus doing a winged liner. So this is what I came up with. It's neutral, it's all matte, it's pretty simple to do. It's kind of time consuming because you have to take your time and use smaller brushes, but the actual techniques are fairly simple to do once you get the hang of it. But if you want to see how to get this look, then just keep watching. I'm going to be priming my eyes with my Lancôme Teint Idole Ultra Wear Concealer. And the reason I'm doing this instead of my typical primer is I really want that base to be very solid and concealed, just because there's really not going to be any eyeshadow on the actual like lid area. It's going to be all out here. So I'm just going in with a big brush just to kind of blend that out. I don't want a super thick layer because I don't want this to crease. I'm going to be dipping into my MAC Single Shadows. This is the shade Brule. I'm going to use that to set my base. I'm just applying that shade with a large shader brush from Sigma Beauty, and I'm going to, again, really focus it on this outer part right here where we're going to be doing the majority of the blending. I'm going to start with the shade Omega. With a MAC 217 brush, I'm going to put that on the outer lash line and start to drag it out. This is a fairly light shade, and as you can see, I'm doing more flicking motions. And then once the majority of the product's off my brush, I'm just going to go back and forth. I'm dipping in a little bit more with that product, and I'm just going to continue building that up. Majority of the pigment is going to be right here, and then it's going to get lighter as it goes to here, and it goes inwards. Next, I'm going in with the shade Cork. And for this, I'm going in with a Sigma E45 brush, which you can see comes to a point, and I just have the product on that very tip. That way it's easier to blend into that shape. So with that eyeshadow, I'm first going to place it again in that darkest area, and then I'm going to start flicking it inwards, and then I'm going to start somewhat creating that winged shape using just the tip of that brush. And I do want it to kind of connect to my lower lash line right here. You can see there's a little bit of a gap, so I'm going to go in with a little bit more product and just make sure that that area has product, and you'll see at the end kind of why I'm doing that. So same thing with this, I'm just going to be flicking to the outer part. If you get too much product, you can kind of just do that, and you can see it cleaned it up. Now with that MAC 217 that we used with our previous color with no additional product, I'm just going to blend out that line. We still, again, want it to have that wing shape, but we don't want it to be too harsh and too defined. Before we go into the black, I'm going to take the shade Brun. For this eyeshadow, I'm going to go in with the Sigma E36, which is one of my absolute favorite brushes. If I compare it to like a regular fluffy brush, you can see, one, how much smaller it is, but it's mostly packed at the base, and then it's very loose when you get to the top, so it's perfect for detail work. With that shade, we're going to basically repeat the same process. I'm just not going to take it up as high. So we're going to start the bulk of the pigment right there, go a little bit inwards with very, very little pressure, and then start to fade upwards. I prefer to do this look without any concealer or anything on. That way I can clean it up if I need to, if I get a little bit too sloppy. So you can see with my eye shape, it kind of dips down right there just with having like a slight hood to my eyes, and I'm almost 30, so it kind of happens with age. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm looking straight up, and I'm going to pack on that color where that fold is. So you can see my wing's going to be thicker, but this way it's going to flatter my eye shape. So now that I have that on there, I'm going to basically do the same thing, just keep going back and forth, bringing it inwards and bringing it outwards. But now when I look forward, it just looks a little bit more seamless. And now, since I covered up a little bit of that Cork shade, I'm going to go back in with that last brush and just touch it up a little bit, since I did have to thicken up the wing due to my eye shape. But again, very little product, and I'm just using the point of that brush. And before we go in with the black, I'm just going to go in with that original brush just to buff everything out. If you feel like this isn't as blended as you would like, you can go in with whatever color you use to set your base. You could go in with a face powder, just something that matches your skin tone that'll help diffuse these out. And now for the black, I'm of course taking Carbon by MAC. And now with a MAC 266 brush, which is just an angled brush, I'm going to start creating the actual wing. So as you can see with the brush, I have the point facing the outer corner of my eye. I'm first going to stamp, again, I want it to kind of connect to this lower lash line. I'm going to stamp it, that way I don't fling black everywhere, and then once that's off there, I'm just going to flick it up, again with very, very light pressure. And I'm going to rotate it and start to drag that inwards. I have little to no product on my brush right now, but I'm going to keep building it up. And now that I have more product, I'm just going to do the same thing, but I'm going to go up a little bit higher so we can thicken that up. And then flip it. And I'm going to also drag that on the outer third of the actual lash line. So I just wiped that brush off and I'm going to start flicking upwards from the base. And then I'm also going to extend this a little bit more. Okay, so that kind of gives me the rough draft, so I'm going to keep doing that. I'm going to keep building it up, wiping off my brush, and then flicking it upwards till I get this as dark as I wanted and as blended as I want it. So here's how that's looking right now. So I'm going to go in with a really tiny little pencil brush. This is the Sigma L06. It's technically a lip brush, but I'm going back in with the shade Brun, which was that darkest brown that I used. I'm going to look down into a mirror and I'm going to start pressing where the black ends so it fades nicely into the Brun. I don't want to keep blending with a angled brush because one, that's not what they're made for, and two, it's just going to get black everywhere. So we're just going to keep patting, looking straight, and now you can see that it's starting to blend out. Always open and look straight ahead, that way you can make sure that this doesn't have like a weird fold in it. Depending on your eye shape, that will happen. I'm going back in with that shade Brun that we used to set our base, just to really pack it on the lid to brighten it up a little bit. So I'm focusing most of the product here, and then once most of it's off my brush, then I'm going to go over here where the liner is. I just don't want a ton of light product right here. So now I want to brighten up underneath that line, but I don't want to go in with like a concealer or anything because it's going to make it not blended. So I'm going in with my translucent powder. This is the one size powder, but any will do. And I'm going to pack it on. I'm almost baking underneath this line. And I'm going to let it sit while I do my mascara and lashes, and that way when you remove it, it is brightened and a little bit sharper here, but it's still diffused because we used a powder versus like concealer or remover. But I'm going to go all the way out here, continue packing that on, and I'm going to do mascara and lashes. Okay, I'm about to go in and do my concealer, but I'm first going to dust off that powder, and I'm going to kind of overlap with the eyeshadow because again, I want this to be kind of softened out by that powder. Now I'm going in with the Urban Decay eyeliner in Double Life, and I'm just going to apply that into my waterline. This is definitely optional. You could do a nude, you could do a black. I like to do a brown. I just feel like it kind of ties in the whole smokiness of the look. Okay, now for the lower lash line, I'm just going to use all of those colors. Again, I'm starting out with Omega, and you want to use small brushes for this because you want to keep it tight to the lash line, similar to how the upper lash line is. So I'm just going to go from about, I don't know, 2/3 of the way into the outer corner with that shade. And now I'm doing the same thing with Cork. And now with that tiny little pencil brush, I'm going in with Brun. I'm going to take this just halfway in, keeping it a little bit higher up. And again, making sure to connect to that wing out here. Now with a Sigma E15, I'm going to get right under the lashes and I'm going to press on that outer third with Carbon. I'm going to tilt my head and make sure that it connects to that wing. And all I'm doing in this brush is just stamping it on. And with that first pencil brush, I'm going to very lightly, like I'm very lightly touching the skin, I'm going to diffuse that just a little bit. And now I want to do the inner corner little point. I'm going to use a Sigma E06, which again is a really tiny winged liner brush. I'm going to use the shade Brun first, and then I might decide if I want to do the black. But I'm going to, with the point facing my upper eyelashes, I'm going to stamp and get the direction that I want it to go in. We can always clean this up if you mess it up. And then I'm going to flip it. And then I'm going to drag it to my lower lash line. And then I'm just going to keep going back and forth. I don't want that to be so long though, so I'm going in with a tiny concealer brush and a little bit of my concealer and just concealing the under part. I'm taking off this little bit right here. I'm just going to keep looking in the mirror to make sure this is how I want it. And now that I have that where I want it, I'm just going in with my MAC Extended Play Gigablack Lash as usual, and I'm going to do a decent amount of mascara on the bottom. And here is that entire look completed. You can definitely leave out the inner corner point if that's not something that you like, but I feel like it just kind of ties the whole look together. But that is it for me. If there's anything else you want to see, just comment down below and I will be sure to get that up for you, and I will see you guys in my next video.